The first time my mother called my children disruptions, I apologized. I assumed it was just the adjustment of having two toddlers in her pristine house, but when she stood in the kitchen and told me to pay rent or leave, I realized the silence she demanded had nothing to do with peace. She did not want quiet. She wanted a scapegoat to cover the debts she and my siblings had been hiding for years. The windshield wipers slapped against the glass, a rhythmic metronome counting down the miles to the one place I promised myself I would never return to as a dependent. The rain in Ohio always felt different than the rain in the city. It was heavier here, grayer, soaking into the flat fields and suburban lawns with a persistence that felt personal. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Leo, who was 5, had finally fallen asleep with his head lolling against the car seat strap. Sophie, barely 3, was awake, clutching her stuffed rabbit by its worn ears, starting out at the blur of passing trees. "We are going on an adventure," I had told them. I gripped the steering wheel tight enough to turn my knuckles white. It was the only way to keep my hands from shaking. At 33 years old, I was supposed to be the one who had made it out. I was the one who went to college, got the marketing job in the city, married the man with the steady career, and bought the starter home with the good interest rate. I was the one who sent birthday cards on time and hosted Thanksgiving. But life has a way of dismantling your pride piece by piece until you are packing your entire existence into a mid-sized sedan and driving back to Maple Glen. First came the separation. It was messy, the kind of emotional carnage that leaves you gasping for air in the middle of the grocery store aisle. Elliot decided he needed space, which was a polite way of saying he wanted to be single without the guilt of abandoning his family. Then, 3 weeks later, the layoff came. The company was restructuring. My boss had said, avoiding my eyes, it was a business decision. I had savings, but legal fees and the cost of breaking a lease burned through money like fire through dry paper. So here I was. "We are just visiting Grandma for a while." I said to the silence of the car, "Just for a little bit." I turned onto Elm Street. The houses were exactly as I remembered them. Sturdy, brick, respectable, lawns manicured to within an inch of their lives. This was a neighborhood where people cared deeply about appearances, where a stray dandelion was a moral failing. My mother's driveway was empty. I pulled in, killed the engine, and took a deep breath. "Okay," I whispered. "Game face." I opened the back door and unbuckled Sophie. She smelled like apple juice and sleep. When I lifted her out, she blinked against the gray light. "Are we home?" she asked. "Not home, baby," I said, forcing a brightness into my voice that I did not feel. "We are staying with Grandma Janice. Remember? It is like a long sleepover." I gathered bags, steered a groggy Leo toward the front door, and rang the bell. I did not have a key anymore. I had not lived here in 15 years. The door swung open, and there she was, Janice Brooks. My mother. She looked impeccable, as always. Her silver hair was coiffed into a stiff, immovable style, and she wore a beige cardigan over a pressed blouse. There was no stain on her, no wrinkle. She looked like she had been standing there waiting for a photographer to capture her in her natural habitat. "Hazel," she said. She pulled me into a hug that felt more like a structural assessment than an embrace. She patted my back twice, then pulled away to look at the children. "And here are the little ones," she said, her smile tight. "Look at you. You have grown." "Hi, Grandma," Leo said, rubbing his eyes. "Well, come in, she said, ushering us out of the damp air. "Let us not let the heat out. Fuel prices are absolutely criminal this year." We stepped into the foyer. The smell hit me instantly. Lemon pledge, old paper, and something sterile, like a doctor's office waiting room. The house was silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like a blanket soaked in water. The hardwood floors gleamed. The runners were perfectly straight. On the side table, a porcelain bowl filled with decorative spheres sat exactly in the center. I felt a sudden, sharp panic. I had 2 toddlers. This house was a museum. "Thank you for letting us stay." "Mom," I said, dropping the duffel bags, "I really appreciate it. It is just until I find a new position. I have a few interviews lined up remotely. Janice smoothed the front of her cardigan. Of course, she said. Family helps family. That is what I told Travis and Megan. I said Hazel needs a landing pad, and I have the space. She looked at Leo, who was reaching for the porcelain bowl. Leo, honey, no touching, she said. Her voice was soft, but there was a steel edge to it. That is for looking, not for holding. Leo pulled his hand back as if he had been burned. Why don't we get you settled? She said. I put you in your old room. The children can take the guest room down the hall. Actually, I said quickly, I think it is better if they stay in the room with me, just for now. The transition has been a lot for them, and they sleep better if I'm close. Janice frowned, a tiny crease appearing between her perfectly shaped eyebrows. Nonsense, she said. They need to learn independence. But if you insist, we can bring the cot in. The first night was a blur of unpacking and hushing. Every sound we made seemed amplified. The zipper on a suitcase sounded like a chainsaw. Sophie dropping her sippy cup on the floor sounded like a gunshot. I spent the entire evening whispering, shh, quiet voices, shh, gentle feet. The next morning, the reality of our arrangement became clear. I came downstairs with the kids at 7 o'clock. Janice was already in the kitchen, drinking tea from a china cup. There was not a crumb on the counter. Good morning, I said. Good morning, she replied, not looking up from her tablet. Hazel, we need to go over the house routine. I find that structure prevents misunderstandings. She slid a piece of paper across the granite island. I picked it up. It was a typed list. Breakfast, 7 to 8, kitchen to be cleaned immediately after. Quiet hours, 1 to 3 in the afternoon. No running on the hardwood. No food or drink in the living room or bedrooms. Lights out downstairs by 9. Laundry, Tuesdays and Fridays only. I read the list, feeling a tightening in my chest. Mom, these are pretty strict, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Leo and Sophie are little. Sometimes they run. Sometimes they spill. Janice took a sip of her tea and set the cup down with a delicate clink. Children can be taught. Hazel, she said, Travis's boys know how to behave in a home. I am happy to help you, but I cannot have my home turned upside down. I have my own life, my own peace. I am doing you a favor, but I need you to respect the environment. It was the word favor that silenced me. She was right. I was the charity case. I was the daughter who had failed. I understand. I said, we will do our best. Do not just do your best. Hazel, she said, smiling that tight smile again. Ensure it happens. The next week became a military operation of noise suppression. I became an expert in the art of invisible parenting. I woke up before the kids to ensure they did not wake up crying. I ushered them into the car by 8:30 every morning, rain or shine, to get them out of the house. We spent hours at the public library, huddled in the children's section until Leo complained he was bored. We went to the park even when the ground was wet and the wind bit at our cheeks, just to let them run and scream where it did not matter. When we were in the house, I hovered over them like a hawk. Inside voices, I would whisper 100 times a day, let's play the statue game. I would suggest when they started to get energetic. I bought coloring books, felt boards, soft blocks, anything that did not beep. Bang or clatter, I was exhausted. My job hunt happened in the fractured moments when they were napping or watching a tablet with headphones on. I was writing cover letters with one eye on the screen and one eye on the volume dial, but no matter what I did, it did not seem to be enough. One Tuesday evening, my siblings came over. Travis was the oldest, a real estate agent who drove a leased luxury car and wore suits that were slightly too shiny. Megan was the youngest, a dental hygienist who still sought Janice's approval with the fervor of a teenager. They sat in the living room, drinking the coffee Janice had brewed. I sat on the edge of the ottoman, keeping a physical barrier between my family and my children, who were playing silently with puzzles on the rug. So, how is the job hunt? Travis asked, checking his watch. It is going, I said. The market is tough right now, but I have a second interview with a logistics firm next week. That is good, Megan said. She looked around the room. It is nice of Mom to let you crash here. I do not know if I could handle moving back in. It is temporary, I said, my voice tight. Janice walked in from the kitchen with a tray of cookies. Hazel is doing her best, Janice said, setting the tray down. It is an adjustment. Having little ones around again, it disrupts the flow of things. Certainly, but we make sacrifices for family. She said it with a martyr's sigh, the kind that invites praise. You are a saint. Mom, Travis said, taking a cookie. Seriously, most people your age are downsizing and traveling. Not running a daycare. I bit my tongue. I wanted to scream that I was not using her as a daycare. I watched my own children. I cleaned up after them. I bought our own groceries. I really appreciate it. I said instead, Mom needs her boundaries. Though, Megan added, looking at me, you know how she gets with her migraines. You have to make sure the kids aren't too much. We are being very quiet. I said, just make sure it stays that way. Travis said, Mom has earned her peace. She should not have to feel uncomfortable in her own house. I looked at my children. Leo was trying to fit a puzzle piece into the wrong spot. His brow furrowed in concentration. He was being perfect. They were being perfect. And yet, the air in the room felt toxic, as if our mere existence was an insult to the family legacy. 2 days later, I was bringing groceries in from the car. The neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, was pruning her roses near the property line. She had lived there since I was a child, a woman who thrived on the neighborhood grapevine. Hello, Mrs. Higgins, I called out, trying to be polite. She straightened up and adjusted her sun hat. Hazel, she said, I saw you back. Your mother told me about your situation. My situation? I asked, pausing with a bag of apples in my arms. Yes, she said, leaning over the fence. She said you needed a place to get back on your feet. It is so hard these days, isn't it? When things fall apart, it is wonderful that Janice is willing to take you in. Not many mothers would pause their lives like that. Her tone was sympathetic, but the words were razor blades. When things fall apart, pause their lives. Janice wasn't just venting. She was crafting a narrative. To the world, she was the benevolent savior, and I was the broken child dragging her down. I tightened my grip on the grocery bag. We are doing fine. Mrs. Higgins, I said, it is just a transition between jobs. Of course. Dear, she said. Of course. I walked into the house, my face burning. I realized then that my children and I were not treated as family members in need of support. We were treated as inconveniences. We were stains on the carpet that Janice was trying to scrub out before company arrived. The explosion happened on a Thursday. It was raining again, a torrential downpour that made the park impossible. We had been inside all day. The cabin fever was palpable. I decided to let them play a board game in the living room. It was chutes and ladders. I put a thick blanket down on the floor to muffle the sound of the dice. Okay, whisper game, I said. Who can whisper the best? They started playing. For 20 minutes. It was fine. Then, Sophie slid down a long chute and let out a squeal of delight. Leo laughed, a genuine belly-deep laugh of a 5-year-old boy having fun. Shh, I hissed, looking toward the hallway, but it was too late. Leo laughed again, louder this time. The sound of footsteps hammered down the hallway. Janice appeared in the doorway. Her face was not the composed mask I was used to. It was twisted in anger. Enough, she shouted. The room went dead silent. Leo froze, his hand hovering over his game piece. Sophie's lip began to tremble. Mom, I started, standing up. They were just, I cannot take this, Janice said, her voice shaking. I cannot take the constant noise, the chaos. I go to my room to read, and I hear thumping. I come down for tea, and there are toys on the floor. There are no toys on the floor, I said, gesturing to the blanket. We are being careful. It is the energy. Hazel, she snapped. It is the constant presence. This does not feel like my house anymore. I feel like a guest in my own home. I worked 30 years to have this quiet, to have this space, and you have come in here and taken it over. Mom, that is not fair, I said, stepping between her and the kids. "We are barely here. We leave all day. It is not working," she said. She crossed her arms, her cardigan pulling tight. "I have spoken to Travis and Megan. We all agree. You are an adult. Hazel, you have 2 children. You cannot just live here for free and expect me to absorb the cost of your lifestyle." "Cost?" I asked, bewildered. "I buy our food. I pay for my own gas. I haven't asked you for a dime. The water, the electricity, the wear and tear." She listed, "It adds up. But it is not just the money, it is the entitlement. You think because you are my daughter, you can just land here and stay indefinitely." She took a breath and delivered the ultimatum. "If you want to stay, you need to contribute, real contribution. You need to pay rent, or you need to find somewhere else to go." I stared at her. My mother, the woman who had just told the neighbor how happy she was to help, was evicting me unless I paid up. I called a family meeting that night. I was shaking. I thought, surely, once Travis and Megan heard this, they would talk sense into her. They knew I had no income yet. They knew I was a single mother trying to survive a layoff. We sat around the kitchen table. The kids were asleep upstairs. "Mom wants to charge me rent." I said, looking at Travis, "Market rate rent?" "Travis, you know I can't afford that right now. I have 0 income until I land a job." Travis leaned back in his chair. He didn't look shocked. He looked bored. "Well, Hazel," he said, "Mom has a point. You are 33. You have been here 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I exclaimed. "That is nothing. It is not nothing to Mom." Megan chimed in. "She is on a fixed income. Hazel, having 3 extra people in the house drives up her bills. Why should she have to pay for your bad luck?" My jaw dropped. "I am not asking her to pay for anything." I said, "I just need time." "Time is money," Travis said. "Look, we talked about this. It is about adult responsibility. If you pay rent, it changes the dynamic. You are a tenant. You have rights, but you also have responsibilities. It stops you from being a burden." He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was handwritten, but the language was pseudo-legal. Rental agreement, tenant, Hazel Brooks, landlord, Janice Brooks, monthly rent, $1,200, due, 1st of the month. $1,200? I whispered. "That is almost as much as my mortgage was." "It is fair for this neighborhood," Travis said. "Actually, it is a discount." I looked at Janice. She was studying her fingernails, refusing to meet my eyes. "Mom," I said, "please, I have savings. But if I pay this, I won't have enough for a deposit on an apartment when I do find a job. You are trapping me here." "I am teaching you to stand on your own 2 feet," Janice said softly, "if you cannot afford to live." "Hazel, perhaps you should have thought about that before you let your marriage fall apart." The cruelty of the statement took the wind out of me. It was a low blow, aimed directly at my deepest insecurity. "Fine," I said. My voice was hollow. "Fine, I will pay. 3 months," Travis said. "We will review it in 3 months." I signed the paper. I felt sick. I felt like I had just signed a deal with a loan shark. Not my family. I went upstairs that night and sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom. The moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating the sleeping faces of Leo and Sophie. They looked so peaceful. They had no idea that their grandmother viewed them as a billable expense. I made a promise to them then and there. I would pay the rent. I would play their game. But I would not let this break us. I would get a job, any job, and I would get us out of here. I would not let them turn my children into the reason adults turn cruel. I needed a pen to write down my new budget. I opened the bottom drawer of the old desk in the corner. It was filled with old papers, high school yearbooks, and dust. I dug toward the back, looking for a stray ballpoint. My hand brushed against a thick envelope. It felt different than the others. Crisp, official. I pulled it out. It was addressed to Janice Brooks. The return address was in bold blue ink. Brookline Outreach Fund. Across the front, someone had written in red marker, "Keep current." It was unopened, but there was a second envelope beneath it. This one torn open. It was a past due notice. I frowned. My mother was meticulous with money. She lectured us constantly about credit scores and balancing checkbooks. The idea of her having a past due notice was impossible. I hesitated. I shouldn't look. It was an invasion of privacy. But the memory of Travis's voice saying, "She is on a fixed income," rang in my ears. I pulled the letter out of the open envelope. "Dear Ms. Brooks, we have not received your scheduled contribution of $450 for the month of December. Per your agreement, failure to maintain the payment schedule regarding the structural loan may result in further action." Structural loan? Janice had paid off this house 15 years ago. I remembered the party she threw when she burned the mortgage papers. I looked at the date. It was from 2 weeks ago. A quiet alarm went off in the back of my head. It wasn't a siren yet, just a low hum of danger. Why did my mother have a secret loan with an outreach fund? And why were my siblings so desperate to get $1,200 a month out of me? I put the letter back in the drawer and slid it shut. The house was silent. But for the first time, the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a lie. I lay down on the bed next to Sophie, listening to her breathe. I was going to pay the rent, but I was also going to find out what exactly I was paying for. The email from Northline Freight Solutions arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 days after I had signed the rental agreement that effectively indentured me to my mother. It was not a glamorous offer. The role was for a remote logistics coordinator. A title that sounded important, but mostly involved soothing angry truckers and tracking shipments of industrial tiling across the Midwest. The pay was adequate, barely. After taxes and the new $1,200 rent check I had to cut to Janice, I would have enough left over for groceries, gas, and perhaps a frantic trip to the pharmacy for headache medicine. But it was a yes. I typed my acceptance reply with trembling fingers, hitting send before I could talk myself out of it. "I have a job," I told the kids. Leo looked up from his coloring book. His blue marker paused mid-stroke. "Does that mean we can go home?" he asked. I felt that familiar pang in my chest, the one that had become my constant companion since we pulled into the driveway. "Not yet, buddy," I said, crouching down to his level. "But it means Mommy is going to be working from her computer here. We have to make a new plan, a secret agent plan." I framed it as a game because that was the only way to make the stifling restrictions of Janice's house palatable to a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I created a system using construction paper I had bought at the dollar store. I taped a red circle and a green circle to the back of my laptop. When the red circle is up, I explained, that means Mommy is on a mission. We have to be super stealthy. Whisper voices only, if you need me. You squeeze my hand 3 times, but we do not talk. When the green circle is up, we can talk. It was a fragile system, held together by desperation and the resilience of children who just wanted their mother to smile again. My workspace was a small desk crammed into the corner of the bedroom. I bought a headset with a mute button that I learned to toggle with the speed of a gunfighter. I would be in the middle of explaining a shipping delay to a client in Detroit. Hear Sophie drop a block tower behind me and slam the mute button before the clatter could travel down the line. "I am sorry. The connection is a bit spotty," I would say smoothly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Downstairs, the atmosphere had shifted. Now that I had agreed to pay rent, I expected the tension to ease. I thought my contribution would buy me a measure of respect, or at least a cessation of the hostilities. I was wrong. The rent check did not buy peace. It merely bought me a ticket to the show Janice was putting on for the world. 2 days after I started work, Janice hosted her bridge club. These were women she had known for 30 years. Women who wore pearls to the grocery store and judged one another's landscaping with ruthless precision. I came downstairs on my lunch break to refill my water bottle. The living room was filled with laughter and the clinking of teaspoons. "Oh, and here she is," Janice announced, her voice pitching up into a theatrical register of delight. "My hard-working daughter." The women turned to look at me. I forced a smile, tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "Hello, everyone," I said. "Hazel is working remotely." Janice explained. Pouring tea for a woman named Mrs. Gable. She is staring her life over. And I told her, Hazel, this is your home. You stay as long as you need. A mother's door is always open. Mrs. Gable beamed. You are a saint. Janice, she said, truly. Most people would relish the empty nest. But you have taken on a full house again. It is so generous. I stood frozen by the refrigerator. Generous. The word tasted like ash. She had just cashed my check that morning. She was charging me market rate to live in my childhood home. Yet to these women, she was running a charity ward. I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell Mrs. Gable that I was paying for every drop of water in this kettle and every kilowatt of electricity lighting this room. But I saw the look in Janice's eyes. A sharp, daring glint beneath the grandmotherly warmth. Go ahead. That look said, embarrass me. See what happens. I filled my water bottle in silence and went back upstairs. 10 minutes later, after the guests had left, the performance ended. Janice came up the stairs, her footsteps heavy and deliberate. She didn't knock. She just pushed the door open. Hazel, she said, her voice dropping the sugary lilt. The children's shoes are in the hallway. I took them off when we came in. I said, looking up from my spreadsheet. They are not lined up. She said, one is tipped over. It looks sloppy. If anyone had seen that on their way to the powder room, I would have been mortified. Mom. It is one shoe, I said, fighting the urge to snap. It is clutter, she corrected. And while we are at it, I heard Leo singing earlier. He was singing the alphabet. I said, quietly, it carries, Hazel, she said, crossing her arms. The vents conduct sound. I am trying to relax after hosting, and I can hear ABC coming through the ceiling. It is grating. I took a breath, counting to 4. I will tell him to whisper. I said, I tried to solve the problem with logistics. The next weekend, I went to the hardware store and bought 2 large, plush area rugs. They were thick, designed to dampen sound. I also bought a heavy curtain to hang over the door to block the noise from the hallway. When I started unrolling the rug in the bedroom, Janice stood in the doorway, her lips pursed. What is that? She asked. It is soundproofing, I said cheerfully. It will help dampen the noise when the kids play. I thought it would help with the vents. It is hideous, she said. It is beige. Mom, I said, it matches the walls. It covers the hardwood. She said, I paid a fortune to have these floors refinished 5 years ago. I do not want them covered up by cheap synthetic fiber. Mom, I am trying to respect your need for quiet. I argued, this is a compromise. It is not a compromise if it ruins the aesthetic of my house. She said, take it back. I can't take it back. I cut the tags off. I said, then put it in the closet. She snapped, I do not want to see it. She turned on her heel and walked away. I stood there, the heavy roll of carpet in my hands, and realized the truth. She did not want the noise to stop. She wanted the ability to complain about the noise. The noise was her leverage. It was the constant reminder that I was an intruder, a disruption, a problem that only she could tolerate. If I solved the problem, she lost her status as the suffering saint. I rolled the rug out anyway. I put it under the beds where she wouldn't see it immediately. It helped a little, but not enough to stop the complaints. Then came the budget meeting. Travis came over on a Sunday afternoon. He carried a leather portfolio and a calculator, looking every bit the serious businessman, despite the fact that I knew he had barely scraped by in his real estate exams. Hazel, we need to look at the utilities, he said, sitting at the kitchen table. I sat down opposite him. Megan was there too, leaning against the counter, scrolling on her phone. What about them? I asked. I am already paying $1,200 in rent. Yes, but looking at the bills from last month, the water usage is up 40%, Travis said, tapping a number on a spreadsheet he had printed out, and the electric is up 30%. I have 2 kids. Travis, I said, we do laundry? We take baths? Exactly, he said, pointing the pen at me. You are consuming resources. It is not fair for Mom to absorb that variance. Variance, I repeated. You sound like a corporate robot. I am being practical, he said. We need to add a utility surcharge. $200 a month should cover it. $200? I choked out. Travis, that brings my total to $1,400. I can get a 2-bedroom apartment in the city for that. Then go, Megan said, not looking up from her phone. I looked at her. Excuse me? I asked. If it is so cheap. Go, she said, finally meeting my eyes. Her expression was cold, resentful. But you can't, can you? Because you don't have first and last month's rent. And your credit took a hit when Elliot left. So you are here, and if you are here, you pay your share. I looked back at Travis. And what about groceries? He added. I noticed you have been eating the food in the pantry. I eat my own food. I said, I have a separate shelf. I saw you use the olive oil last night, Janice said from the sink, where she was washing a single teaspoon. And the spices, those are not free. Hazel. High-quality olive oil is expensive. I felt like I was losing my mind. Okay, I said, holding up my hands. Okay, I will buy my own oil. I will add the 200. Is there anything else? Do you want to charge me for the air I breathe? Is there a meter for that? Don't be dramatic, Travis said, closing his portfolio. We are just helping you understand the real cost of living. You have been subsidized by your husband for 10 years. You have forgotten what the real world costs. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. Subsidized. As if I hadn't worked. As if I hadn't contributed to my marriage. They were rewriting my history in real time, painting me as a helpless dependent who needed their harsh lessons to survive. I agreed to the new total. I had no choice. But as I walked away from that table, I felt a shift inside me. It was the death of hope. I stopped looking for their approval. I stopped trying to prove I was a good daughter. I just wanted to survive them. A few days later, I came home from a rare outing to the grocery store, buying my own olive oil, to find a man installing a new lock on my bedroom door. He was drilling into the frame, sawdust falling onto the hallway floor. What is going on? I asked, dropping my bags. Janice appeared from the master bedroom. Oh, good. You are back, she said. I thought it would be better for you to have some privacy, with the kids running around, and your work equipment. We thought a lock would be safer. She handed me a shiny silver key. I looked at the lock. It was a heavy-duty deadbolt. It wasn't a privacy lock. It was a security lock. Mom, I didn't ask for this. I said, Travis suggested it. She said, he said with you working from home, you need to secure your data. And honestly, Hazel, sometimes the children wander. I found Leo in the guest room yesterday. This way. If you need to step out, you can secure the room. It sounded logical on the surface, but it felt wrong. It felt like containment. I looked at the key in my hand. Do you have a copy? I asked. Janice blinked, looking offended. Well, naturally. Hazel, it is my house. I need access for emergencies, or if there is a fire. So it wasn't for my privacy, it was for her control. She could lock me out, or, a darker thought whispered, she could lock me in. I took the key. Thanks, I said, my voice flat. That night, I tested the lock. It clicked shut with a heavy, final sound. I unlocked it immediately. I didn't like the feeling of being behind it. I sat down at my desk to check my email. My laptop was open. I always closed it. I frowned. I moved the mouse. The browser history was open. Someone had been looking at my search history. Apartments for rent in Crescent Ridge. Legal aid services, Ohio. My stomach dropped. She was snooping. She was checking to see if I was leaving. I stood up and went to the window, looking out at the dark street. Paranoia pricked at the back of my neck. Why was she so obsessed with keeping me here, yet so determined to make me miserable? If she hated my presence so much, why not help me leave? The answer came 2 days later. In the form of a phone call. It was 3 o'clock on a Wednesday. The kids were doing quiet time. Leo watching a nature documentary with headphones. Sophie napping. The house was dead silent. My cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up, thinking it might be a client. "Hazel Brooks?" a woman's voice asked. She sounded brisk, professional, but with an edge of impatience. "Yes, this is she. This is Linda from the Brookline Outreach Fund. I am calling to confirm the payment arrangement on the household plan. We show a pending transfer, but the account number seems to be missing a digit." I froze. "Brookline. The name on the envelope in the drawer. I think you have the wrong person," I said slowly. "I don't have an account with you." There was a pause, the sound of typing on the other end. "Is this the daughter of Janice Brooks?" Linda asked. "Yes. And you are residing at 42 Elm Street?" "Yes." "Then you are part of the household plan," Linda said, her voice taking on a confusing mix of authority and confusion. "The modifications submitted last month listed you as the primary contributor for the restructuring. We just need to verify the banking details to avoid a default on the arrears." My head spun. "Primary contributor, restructuring, arrears. I did not agree to this," I said, my voice rising. "I don't know what you're talking about. What is a household plan? What is the money for?" Linda's tone shifted. She became guarded. "Ma'am, I cannot discuss the full details without the primary account holder's code, but the file indicates that your income was used to qualify for the extension. If you are saying you did not authorize this, I didn't authorize anything." I said firmly, "I am a tenant. I pay rent to my mother." "That is it." There was a long silence on the line. "I see," Linda said finally. Her voice was cold now. "I will need to make a note of this. If the payment is not received by Friday, the status of the account will change. You might want to speak with Ms. Brooks immediately." She hung up. I sat there, the phone warm in my hand. The room felt suddenly very small. My income was used to qualify for an extension. My mother hadn't just asked for rent. She had used my presence, my existence, to leverage some kind of deal with this fund. She had claimed I was contributing to a debt I didn't even know existed. I waited until 5 o'clock. I waited until Janice came into the kitchen to start dinner. She was humming, chopping carrots with a steady rhythm. "Mom," I said. She didn't look up. "Hand me the salt." "Would you?" I didn't move. "Who is Brookline Outreach Fund?" I asked. The chopping stopped. The knife hovered over a piece of carrot. Janice turned slowly. Her face was composed, but her eyes were hard. "Why would you ask that?" she said. "Because they called me." I said, "They called my cell phone. They said I am the primary contributor on a household plan. They said my income was used to get an extension." Janice let out a short, dismissive laugh. She turned back to the carrots. "Telemarketers, Hazel, scammers. You shouldn't engage with them. It wasn't a scammer." "Mom," I said, stepping closer. She knew my name. She knew I lived here. She knew about the rent. I did not say she knew about the rent. I said she knew I was residing here. "You are overstepping," Janice said, the knife hitting the cutting board with a loud thwack. "My finances are none of your business. I handle the household. You just pay your share." "But they said I am liable." I pressed. "They said if the payment isn't made—" "Hazel!" she shouted, spinning around. She pointed the knife at me. Not a threat, but an extension of her anger. "Stop it. You come into this house, bringing your drama, your noise, your broken life, and now you want to interrogate me? I am the one keeping a roof over your head. I am the one dealing with the stress. The agreement we have is generous compared to the market. You should be grateful I am not charging you $2,000. She was deflecting. She was attacking to hide the truth. "I am not talking about rent," I said quietly. "I am talking about fraud." Janice's face went white. Then it went red. "Get out of my kitchen," she whispered. "Go upstairs. I am done looking at you." I went upstairs. I didn't go to my room. I went to the linen closet where I had hidden a notebook. I wrote it down. Wednesday, 3 p.m. Call from Linda at Brookline. Terms used. Household plan. Primary contributor. Arrears. Later that evening, Megan came over. I cornered her in the hallway while Janice was in the shower. "Megan, what is going on with Mom's money?" I asked in a hush. Megan looked tired. She leaned against the wall and crossed her arms. "She is stressed. Hazel," she said quietly, "she has been stressed about money for years. Dad didn't leave as much as everyone thought. And the house. The repairs add up. So why didn't she tell me?" I asked. "Why lie? Why drag me into some scheme with a loan company?" "She didn't drag you," Megan said, her voice taking on that familiar defensive edge. "She's trying to save the house. And honestly, it is your fault things are so tight right now." "My fault?" I whispered. "I have been here a month." "Yeah, but you showed up with chaos," Megan said. "You disrupted everything. Mom was managing. She had a system. Then you arrived with the kids and the crying and the extra bills, and she panicked. She had to scramble to make things work. If you weren't here, she wouldn't have to worry about all this extra overhead. It was a masterclass in twisting reality." Megan was claiming that my arrival caused the financial crisis that clearly predated me by years. The past due notice I had found was from December, before I moved in. I stared at my sister. "You are lying," I said. Megan pushed off the wall. "Believe what you want. Hazel, just pay your rent. If you don't, and she loses this house, that is on you. You will be the one who put your mother on the street." She walked away, leaving me standing in the dim hallway. The trap was closing. They weren't just using me for money. They were setting me up to be the villain of the story if the money ran out. The final straw came from the outside. On Saturday, the sun finally came out. I let the kids play in the front yard. A little boy from 3 doors down, a kid named Timmy, rode his bike over. He was about 7. "Hi," he said, stopping at the edge of the driveway. "Hi," I said from the porch step. "I am Hazel. These are Leo and Sophie." "I know," Timmy said. He looked at me with the innocent brutality of a child. "My grandma talks about you." "Oh?" I said, smiling politely. "Mrs. Higgins?" "Yeah," Timmy said. He kicked at a pebble. "She says your mom is really sad. She says you are mooching off her." The smile froze on my face. "What?" I asked. "She says you don't pay your share." Timmy continued, oblivious to the knife he was twisting in my gut. "She says your mom has to pay for everything and you just sit in the room all day. My grandma says it is a shame when kids take advantage of their parents." I looked at this child, this messenger of neighborhood gossip, and I felt a cold clarity wash over me. Janice wasn't just hiding the truth from me, she was broadcasting a lie to everyone else. She was inoculating the community against me. If I ever tried to tell the truth, that she was extorting me, that she was drowning in secret debt, no one would believe me. I was already the mooch. I was already the ungrateful daughter. I stood up. "Timmy," I said, my voice steady, "you should go home now." He shrugged and pedaled away. I gathered Leo and Sophie. "Come on, guys," I said. "Inside." We went upstairs. I locked the door with the key Janice had given me. I pulled out my notebook. I opened my laptop. I created a new folder on the desktop. I named it Exit Strategy. I started scanning everything. The rent agreement, the utility bills I could find in the recycling bin, the screenshots of the call log showing the number for Brookline. I wrote down the conversation with Megan. I wrote down what Timmy said. I was done trying to be the good daughter. I was done trying to keep the peace. They wanted a war? They were fighting an enemy they didn't understand. They thought I was weak because I had lost my job and my husband. They forgot that I was a mother. And a mother who realizes her children are being used as pawns is the most dangerous creature on earth. I was not just going to leave. I was going to survive. And I was going to keep the receipts. The printer in the home office, a room I was technically not allowed to use but had to enter to retrieve a shipping label I'd sent from my laptop, was whirring. My mother wasn't home. She was at her hair appointment, a weekly ritual that cost $80 despite her claiming poverty. I reached for my label, but it was buried under a stack of freshly printed pages. I lifted them to find my single sheet, and my eyes caught the bold text on the document beneath. It was a bank statement. My heart did a traitorous little skip. I knew I shouldn't look. It was the same feeling I'd had with the envelope in the drawer, the prickle of crossing a boundary. But the memory of Linda from Brookline Outreach Fund asking about a household plan and my contribution was a persistent itch I couldn't ignore. I glanced at the page. Withdrawal. ATM. Maple Glen Casino Resort. $200. Withdrawal. ATM. Maple Glen Casino Resort. $100. Withdrawal. ATM. Maple Glen Casino Resort. $300. The dates were all from last month. Then, further down. A recurring line item. BRK Outreach. Admin fee. $150. And another. BRK Outreach. Internal payment. $400. I frowned. Admin fee? Internal payment usually meant interest payment. This wasn't a charitable donation. You don't pay interest to a charity. You don't pay admin fees to an outreach fund unless you are the one being reached out to. I quickly snapped a photo of the page with my phone, my hands shaking, and then placed the stack back exactly as I found it, back in my room with the new deadbolt locked. I stared at the photo. The casino withdrawals were shocking enough. Janice always spoke of gambling as a tax on stupidity, but the BRK outreach lines were terrifying. It looked predatory. It looked like a loan shark dressed up in non-profit clothing. I needed to understand what I was looking at. The next morning, I told Janice I was taking the kids to the library. Instead, I drove to the Maple Glen Community Resource Center. It was a low brick building near the high school, the kind of place that smelled of stale coffee and desperation, but they offered free financial counseling on Thursdays. I sat across from a woman named Mrs. Alvarez. She had kind eyes and a desk overflowing with pamphlets. I am not asking for a loan, I clarified, keeping my voice low. I just need to understand some terminology. If someone is paying an admin fee and an interest payment to an organization called an outreach fund, what does that usually mean? Mrs. Alvarez adjusted her glasses. Well, she said, leaning forward, it depends on the organization. But we have seen a rise in what we call shadow lending. Companies disguise themselves as assistance programs or community funds. They offer money for home repairs or emergencies, but the terms are structured like payday loans. High interest, hidden fees. They often call the interest contributions or admin fees to bypass usury laws. And a household plan? I asked. That is often a tactic to bind other adults in the home to the debt, she explained. If the primary borrower can't pay, they try to claim that anyone benefiting from the household is liable. It is legally murky, but they use it to intimidate family members into paying. The pieces clicked together with a sickening sound. The rent ultimatum, the sudden strictness about adult responsibility, the desperate need for $1,200 a month. It wasn't about the noise. It wasn't about Leo laughing or Sophie dropping a toy. It wasn't about Janice needing her peace. It was about the payments. Janice was drowning in a debt trap, one likely exacerbated by those ATM withdrawals at the casino, and she needed a steady income stream to keep the wolves at bay. I was not a daughter to her anymore. I was a revenue source, and she was using the noisy kids narrative to guilt me into compliance. I thanked Mrs. Alvarez and walked out into the bright, cold sunshine. I felt nauseous. The betrayal was so much deeper than I had imagined. It was calculated. I drove home on autopilot. When I walked into the kitchen, Travis was there. He was leaning against the counter, eating a sandwich he had made with my bread. "Where were you?" he asked. "Library," I said, hanging up my coat. He narrowed his eyes. "Mom said you were gone for 3 hours. The library story time is only 45 minutes. I looked at him. He was watching me with a suspicion that bordered on paranoia. We went to the park afterwards. I lied. "Why? Am I being timed?" "I saw you come out of the resource center." "Hazel," he said. My stomach dropped. "I was driving by." He continued. "I saw your car. What were you doing there? Are you trying to apply for welfare?" Because that reflects poorly on the family address. I am not applying for welfare. I said, keeping my voice steady. I was asking about childcare vouchers. He stared at me, chewing slowly. You know, he said, stepping closer. You act like you are so independent, but you are sneaking around town. Mom is worried. You know, she thinks you are up to something. Up to what? I asked. Trying to take the house, he said. I laughed. It was a harsh, incredulous sound. Take the house? Travis, I don't want this house. I want to leave this house. I am paying rent to be here. Remember? Yeah. Well, he said, his voice lowering. Mom thinks you are documenting things, taking pictures, snooping in her papers. He knew, or at least, he suspected. I am not snooping. I said, I am living here. Just be careful. Hazel, he said, you are on thin ice. You push too hard, and you might find yourself on the street. And good luck getting custody of those kids if you are homeless. The threat hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. He was using my children as leverage. I went upstairs and locked the door. I sat on the floor, breathing hard. Travis was afraid. He was afraid of what I would find. Why? Was he just protecting Mom? Or was he involved? My phone buzzed. It was Elliot. Can we talk? I didn't have the energy for Elliot, but I couldn't ignore him. We had a tentative schedule for video calls with the kids. I called him back. Hey, he said. His voice sounded casual, the voice of a man who was enjoying his freedom. Look, I have been thinking. Since you are staying with your mom and things are unsettled, maybe we should adjust the custody arrangement. Adjust how? I asked. My guard going up? Well, maybe I should take them for the summer, he said. You know, until you get your own place. It doesn't look good. Hazel, living in your mom's spare room? I talked to my lawyer, and he thinks a judge would see it as unstable. I gripped the phone. I have a job. Elliot, I said, I have a safe place for them to sleep. We are fine. Are you? He asked. I heard from a mutual friend that your mom is telling people you are broke and refusing to work. Janice. Her narrative was spreading. That is not true. I said, I am working. I am paying rent. Look, I am just saying. He said, if you can't provide a stable environment, I can. You left us. I reminded him, you don't get to claim moral superiority because you have a bachelor pad and I have a family crisis. I am just thinking of the kids, he said. We are fine. I repeated. I have to go. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I couldn't fight Elliot and my family at the same time. I needed to be bulletproof. I needed paper trails. I needed external validation. I logged onto the computer and checked the status of the childcare application I had actually submitted 2 weeks ago, not at the resource center, but online. Status? Approved. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was a voucher for 20 hours a week of subsidized care at a local daycare center. It wasn't full-time, but it was enough. It meant I could work without hushing the kids every 5 minutes. It meant they could play loudly without Janice storming in. It was a small win, but it felt like a lifeline. The next day, the atmosphere in the house shifted again. I came downstairs to find Janice in the living room. She wasn't cleaning. She wasn't watching TV. She was sitting on the sofa, holding a tissue, looking out the window. Mom? I asked. She sniffed and dabbed at her eyes. Oh, Hazel, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't hear you come down. Are you okay? I asked, despite my better judgment. I just feel erased, she said. Erased? I feel like I don't matter in my own life anymore, she said, looking at me with tear-filled eyes. I try so hard to be good to everyone, to you, to Travis, to Megan, and I feel like I am just being used. She patted the cushion next to her. Sit, please. I sat on the edge of the armchair. Keeping my distance, I have been thinking, she said. This tension, it is killing me. I want us to be a family again. I want to trust you. I want that too. Mom, I said, then sign this, she said. She reached under the cushion and pulled out a document. It wasn't the handwritten note from before. This was typed. formatted to look like a contract. But there were typos. The margins were uneven. "What is it?" I asked. "A family agreement," she said, "to put everything to rest, so we don't have to argue about money or rules anymore." I took the paper. Family Unity and Housing Agreement 1. Tenant, Hazel Brooks, agrees to pay the sum of $1,400 monthly, to be paid in cash or direct transfer. 2. Tenant acknowledges that all household decisions regarding maintenance, guests, and noise levels are at the sole discretion of the landlord, Janice Brooks. 3. Tenant agrees to pay a retroactive convenience fee of $2,000 for the initial month of occupancy. 4. Tenant agrees not to contest, investigate, or interfere with any existing household financial arrangements, including but not limited to utility management and third-party service providers. I stopped reading at point 4. Third-party service providers, that was code for Brookline. And point 3, retroactive convenience fee? "Mom," I said slowly, "this says I owe you $2,000 for the month I already paid for. It is for the stress." "Hazel," she said, her voice hardening slightly, "for the disruption, and to show good faith, and this part." I pointed to number 4. "About not contesting financial arrangements. What does that mean?" "It means you trust me," she said. "It means you stop digging around in things that don't concern you. Travis said you were asking questions at the center. It hurts me. Hazel, it hurts me that you think I'm incompetent. I don't think you are incompetent." I said, "I think you are being taken advantage of by a predatory lender." Her face snapped shut. The tears vanished instantly. "Sign the paper." "Hazel, no." I said, "Sign it," she shouted, slamming her hand on the coffee table. I stood up. "I am not signing this. I am not paying a retroactive fee, and I am certainly not signing a gag order about the household finances when I am the one funding them." Janice stood up too. She was shaking. "If you don't sign this," she hissed, "you are declaring war on this family." I looked at the document again. The phrasing, sole discretion, retroactive convenience fee. It sounded like Travis. Travis, who used legal jargon he didn't understand to sound important. "Did Travis write this?" I asked. "It doesn't matter who wrote it." She said, "It is what I want." I dropped the paper on the table. "I am sorry. Mom, I can't sign it." She looked at me with pure hatred. "Then you will regret it," she whispered. I walked away. My legs felt like jelly. I went to the kitchen to get water, needing to cool down. Megan walked in the back door. She must have been listening from the porch. "You really are selfish. You know that?" she said. I spun around. "Selfish?" I asked. "Megan, did you read that thing? She wants $2,000 in back rent for stress." "She is your mother," Megan shouted. "She wiped your ass when you were a baby. She paid for your dance lessons. She fed you. And now you are counting pennies?" "I am not counting pennies. I am counting thousands of dollars," I yelled back. "I don't have it." "Megan, find it," she said. "Ask Elliot. Sell your car. I don't care. Just fix it." "Why is it my job to fix it?" I asked. "Why aren't you paying? You have a full-time job. You have no kids. Why is the broke single mom the one who has to bankroll everyone?" "Because you are the one here," she screamed. "You are the one causing the problem. If you loved Mom, you would do this. You would just sign the paper and make her happy." I looked at my sister. Her face was flushed, her eyes desperate. It wasn't anger. It was panic. "Love isn't signing away my rights." "Megan," I said quietly, "and love isn't extortion." She stared at me, then shook her head. "You are going to lose. Hazel, you are going to lose everything." She stormed out. I stood in the silent kitchen. I felt incredibly alone. The house felt like it was closing in on me. I needed to clear my head. I started cleaning the kitchen counter, scrubbing a stain that wasn't there. As I moved the mail pile that Janice kept by the phone, a letter slid out from the bottom of the stack. It had fallen behind the toaster. It was addressed to Janice Brooks. The return address was Cedar Hollow Title Escrow. Title and escrow? That usually meant a house sale or a refinance. I glanced at the door. No one was coming. I picked it up. It was already open. I pulled out the letter. Dear Ms. Brooks, regarding File 49220-L. This letter is to inform you that the pending lien release requirements have not yet been met. The creditor, Brookline Asset Management, has indicated that the forbearance period will expire on February 15th. Failure to satisfy the outstanding balance of $12,400 will result in the initiation of foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure, the word hung in the air like smoke. February 15th, that was 3 weeks away. The house wasn't just at risk, it was on the brink of being seized. I read the letter again. Lien release. That meant there was already a lien on the house. Janice had borrowed against the house, paid off 15 years ago, and now she couldn't pay it back. The $1,200 from me. The demand for $2,000 more. The household plan. She was frantically trying to scrape together enough cash to stop the foreclosure without admitting it to anyone. Or maybe Travis knew. Pending lien release requirements. Suddenly, Travis's accusation that I was trying to take the house made twisted sense. If the house was foreclosed on, he lost his inheritance. He lost the asset he was likely counting on. He needed me to pay the debt so he could keep the equity. I put the letter back behind the toaster. My hands were cold. I went upstairs to the kids. They were building a fort out of pillows. "Mommy, look," Leo said. "It is a castle. It is beautiful." "Baby," I said. I crawled into the fort with them. It was dark and cozy inside. I pulled them close, smelling their hair. "We are safe," I whispered. "Mommy has a plan." But the plan had to change. I couldn't just save money for a deposit on an apartment. I was living in a sinking ship. I had to get us off before it went under, and I had to do it without them knowing I knew. Because if Janice knew I had seen that foreclosure notice, there would be no more family agreements, there would just be war. I took out my phone and opened the exit strategy folder. I added a new note. February 15th, the deadline. I had 3 weeks to get out. The next morning, I woke up with a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. The stress was manifesting physically, but I had work to do. I logged into my work portal. I had 3 new shipping manifests to process. I put on my headset, the red circle on the back of my laptop facing the room. Leo and Sophie were playing with Play-Doh at the small table I had set up in the corner. They were whispering. Red circle means shh, Leo reminded Sophie. I felt a surge of gratitude and guilt. They were adapting to this prison so well. I finished my work by noon. I had a lunch break. I decided to use it to call the legal aid clinic I had found online. I sat in my car in the driveway, the rain drumming on the roof. "Hello, Maple Glen Legal Aid Project. How can I help you?" "Hi." I said, "I have a question about a rental situation. If a tenant signs a document acknowledging debt that isn't theirs, is it binding?" "It depends," the voice said. It was a young man, probably a law student, but generally, if it can be proven that the debt was pre-existing and the tenant was coerced or misled, it can be contested. However, signing a document that explicitly accepts responsibility, like a family agreement or a household plan, can make things very difficult. It creates a presumption of liability. "So if I sign it, they can come after me?" I asked. "The creditor?" "Yes, if the document frames you as a co-borrower or guarantor." "Absolutely. And what if the landlord is a family member?" "That actually makes it messier," he said. "Courts hate family disputes. They often uphold written agreements because they assume family members act in good faith." Good faith. There was no good faith here. "Thank you," I said. I hung up. So that was the game. The family agreement wasn't just about Janice's ego. It was a legal trap. If I signed it, Travis and Janice could present it to Brookline or the bank. Look, Hazel agreed to pay. Chase her. They were trying to transfer the debt to me. I stared at the steering wheel. My own mother. My own brother. They were willing to sacrifice my financial future, my children's stability, to save their own skins. I went back inside. The house felt colder than usual. I walked into the kitchen. Janice was there, making tea. She looked up, her face hopeful. "Did you think about the agreement?" she asked. I did. I said, "And? I am not signing it." "Mom." Her face fell. Then it hardened into a mask of pure venom. "You are making a mistake," she said. "I don't think I am," I said. I walked past her to the fridge. "By the way," she said, her voice light, conversational. "I spoke to Elliot this morning." I froze. My hand hovered over the milk carton. "You spoke to Elliot?" I asked, turning slowly. "He called the house line," she said. "He wanted to check in. We had a lovely chat. I told him how overwhelmed you seem, how unstable things are here." She took a sip of her tea. "He agrees with me." She continued, "He thinks you need help. He thinks maybe the children would be better off with him for a while, until you sort yourself out." She was smiling. "You told him I was unstable?" I whispered. "I told him the truth." She said, "You are refusing to cooperate. You are refusing to support the family." That sounds like instability to me. It was a threat, a direct, nuclear threat. "Sign the paper, or I help your ex take your children." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the fear behind the malice. She was terrified of losing the house. She was terrified of being exposed as a failure. And like a cornered animal, she was biting the only thing she could reach. "I am not unstable, Mom," I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. "I am the only one in this house who is actually paying their bills with their own money." She set the cup down. "Prove it," she said. "Sign the paper." I didn't answer. I walked out of the kitchen. I went upstairs and packed a bag, just a small one. Essentials. I wasn't leaving yet. I had nowhere to go, but I needed to be ready. I sat on the bed and pulled out my phone. I opened the recording app. Date: January 29th. Incident: Janice admitted to talking to Elliot. Implied she would support his custody claim if I didn't sign the financial agreement. She is using the kids as blackmail. I saved the file. I wasn't just keeping receipts anymore. I was building a case. That night, I heard shouting downstairs. It was Travis. "You can't just tell her," he was yelling. "She will figure it out." "She already knows something," Janice yelled back. "She found the letter." "What letter?" "The one from Cedar Hollow, behind the toaster." There was a silence, then a loud crash, like something glass shattering. I held my breath, listening at the door. "You idiot!" Travis screamed. "I told you to burn everything. If she knows about the lien, she knows about the cosign." "Cosign?" I pressed my ear against the wood. "She won't pay if she knows it is for me," Travis yelled. "You have to make her sign the agreement before the 15th. For him, the lien wasn't just Janice's debt. It was Travis's debt. I discovered Janice also co-signed a private loan for Travis's failed business venture. That explains why Travis is desperate to keep Hazel paying. He's protecting himself. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The business venture Travis had launched 3 years ago, a house-flipping scheme that didn't pan out. He had told everyone the market turned, but he had borrowed money, and Janice had co-signed against the house. That's why he was so involved. That's why he was pushing the rent, the utilities, the agreement. He wasn't protecting Mom. He was protecting himself. If the house was foreclosed on, his debt would be exposed. He would be ruined. They were both in on it. They were cannibalizing me to cover Travis's failure. I stepped away from the door. My hands were trembling, but not with fear anymore. With clarity. I knew the enemy now. I went to the computer. I needed to find a rental. Any rental. I couldn't wait for the perfect apartment. I needed out before the 15th. I found a listing in Crescent Ridge, a townhouse. Small, expensive, but available immediately. I sent the inquiry. "My name is Hazel Brooks. I have steady income, good references, and I can move in within 10 days. Please let me know." I hit send. Then I went to the bed and lay down between my children. I stroked Leo's hair. I held Sophie's hand. They thought they had me trapped. They thought they could squeeze me until I dried up, but they forgot one thing. I was the only one in this house who wasn't lying, and the truth is a heavy weapon if you know how to swing it. I closed my eyes. February 15th. I would be gone by then, and I would leave them to the wolves they had invited in. The waiting room of the Maple Glen Legal Aid Project smelled of wet wool and stale coffee. I sat on a hard plastic chair, my knees pressed together, clutching a manila folder that contained the evidence of my mother's betrayal. I had told Janice I was going to the post office to mail a package. In reality, I was here to find out if my own family could legally destroy me. My name was called by a young attorney named Mr. Henderson. He looked tired, his shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, but his eyes were sharp as he scanned the documents I had brought, the draft of the family agreement Janice had tried to force me to sign, the photo of the bank statement showing the admin fee to Brookline, and the foreclosure notice I had found behind the toaster. He set the papers down and took off his glasses. "Ms. Brooks," he said, his voice grave, "you did the right thing by not signing this." He tapped the Family Unity and Housing Agreement with his pen. "This is not a standard rental contract," he explained. "The language here, specifically Clause 4 regarding the non-contest of financial arrangements, is designed to create what we call an assumption of liability. If you sign this, and if your mother defaults on her obligations to this Brookline entity, they could argue that you knowingly accepted responsibility for the household debt structure." My stomach turned over. "So it is a trap," I said. "It is a liability transfer," he corrected, though the distinction felt meaningless. "By agreeing to pay a retroactive fee and acknowledging the household financial structure, you are effectively becoming a guarantor. If the house goes into foreclosure, or if this creditor sues, your name would be attached to the household assets and liabilities. They could come after your income. They could garnish your wages." He looked at the foreclosure letter, and given this notice from Cedar Hollow, he added, "The ship is already sinking. This document is an attempt to chain you to the mast before it goes under." I sat back, feeling the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just about money, it was about survival. Janice and Travis weren't just asking for help. They were trying to use my clean credit and my income to plug the hole in their drowning ship. Even if it meant pulling me down with them, "You need to sever financial ties immediately. Mr. Henderson advised, "Continue paying your agreed-upon rent so they cannot claim eviction for non-payment, but do not pay a cent more. Do not sign anything. And Ms. Brooks, yes, get out," he said, "as soon as possible. Once the foreclosure proceedings become public, the pressure inside that house is going to become dangerous." I walked out of the clinic into the gray afternoon light. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with a damp chill. I felt a strange sense of calm. The confusion was gone. I knew exactly where I stood. I was not a daughter anymore. I was a target. The next day, the universe threw me a lifeline. I had been interviewing for senior roles quietly, taking calls in my car during errands. I received an email from a logistics firm based in Chicago. They wanted to hire me as a senior operations manager. It was fully remote, and the salary was nearly 30% higher than my current contract. I accepted within 5 minutes. I did not tell Janice. I did not tell Travis. I did not tell Megan. Instead, I drove to a bank in the next town over, a bank my family did not use, and opened a new checking account. I requested paperless statements. I set up my direct deposit to go straight into this new vault. This was my freedom fund. Every dollar that went in there was a brick in the wall I was building between me and them. I went home that evening feeling powerful for the first time in months, but as soon as I walked through the door, the atmosphere hit me. It was toxic. Janice was on the phone in the kitchen. She stopped talking as soon as I entered, but I heard the tail end of her sentence. "Well, she just refuses to pitch in. It is heartbreaking, really, after everything we have done for her." She hung up and turned to the sink, aggressively scrubbing a pot. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She didn't answer. I went upstairs. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my cousin Sarah, who lived in Florida. "Hey, Hazel. Just heard from Aunt Janice. I am really sorry to hear you are struggling. I know it is hard being a single mom, but you really should try to help your mom out more. She sounds so stressed." I stared at the screen. The smear campaign had gone national. Janice was calling the extended family, planting the seeds of her narrative. She was painting me as the ungrateful, mooching daughter who was watching her mother drown and refusing to throw a rope. It was brilliant. In a sick way, by telling everyone I was the problem, she was insulating herself from the shame of the foreclosure when the house was lost. She could say it was because Hazel didn't pay her share. She could say Hazel drained her resources. I didn't reply to Sarah. I blocked her number. I didn't have the energy to fight a PR war. I had to save my children. The tension in the house was leaking into everything. The kids felt it. Children are like seismographs for parental stress. They pick up the tremors long before the earthquake hits. That night, Leo was quiet at dinner. He pushed his peas around his plate. "Grandma looks mad." He whispered to me, "She is just tired." "Buddy?" I whispered back. "Did we make too much noise?" he asked. "No," I said firmly. "You were perfect. You are not the reason Grandma is mad. Grandma is having big feelings about grown-up things. It has nothing to do with you." I saw the relief wash over his face, but it broke my heart that he even had to ask. I doubled down on our rituals. We started doing pancake Sundays in the kitchen, even though Janice hovered and sighed about the mess. I made a production of it, singing songs, letting Sophie stir the batter. Look at us. I would say, we are the pancake champions. I took them to the library 3 times a week. We built elaborate worlds in the park. I created a bubble of normalcy around them, a force field that repelled Janice's sighs and Travis's glares. But the attacks were escalating. Travis came over on a Tuesday night. I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water. He was sitting at the table with Janice, poring over a stack of papers. They stopped talking when I walked in. "Hazel," Travis said, "sit down." I stayed standing. "What is it, Travis?" "We need to talk about the utility overages again," he said. "The electric bill is $50 higher than last year. I already pay a $200 surcharge." I said, "That covers it. It doesn't cover the wear and tear." He said, "You are home all day. You are using the internet bandwidth. You are flushing the toilets." I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat. It was hysterical. "I am flushing the toilets," I repeated. "That is your grievance? That my children and I use the bathroom? It adds up," Janice snapped. "You treat this house like a hotel." "Hazel, you think everything is free? I don't think anything is free." "Mom," I said, "I pay $1,400 a month to live in my childhood bedroom. That is hardly free." Travis stood up. His face was red. "You are ungrateful," he spat. "You are selfish. You are hoarding your money while Mom struggles." I looked at him, really looked at him. He was wearing a new watch, a heavy silver thing that probably cost $500. "Nice watch." "Travis," I said. He pulled his cuff down. "Don't change the subject. I am not." I said, "I am just wondering why the dutiful son, who is so concerned about Mom's finances, is buying luxury accessories while demanding his unemployed sister pay for the toilet water." He stepped closer. "Invading my space. You don't know anything about my finances," he said, his voice low and threatening. "I know more than you think." I said. I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. He backed off. "Just pay the bill." "Hazel," he muttered, "or get out." I walked away. But the interaction gnawed at me. You don't know anything about my finances. 2 days later, I found out. Janice had left her purse on the kitchen counter. It was open. I wasn't looking for anything. But as I moved it to wipe the counter, a small notebook fell out. It was a ledger. Janice was old school. She wrote everything down. I picked it up. The page fell open to a list of names and numbers. Travis, loan PMT. Due January 1st, $500, unpaid. Travis, loan PMT. Due February 1st, $500, unpaid. Travis, car insurance, $120. PD, by Mom. I flipped back a few pages. Travis, business loan installment, $800. PD, by Mom. I stared at the numbers. Travis wasn't helping Janice. He was bleeding her dry. He was borrowing money from her, missing payments, and letting her cover his bills. The anger that rose in me was white hot. This man, This hypocrite had the audacity to lecture me about wear and tear and adult responsibility while he was systematically draining our mother's accounts. He was furious that I might expose him. That was it. If I dug too deep, if I exposed the financial rot, everyone would see that the golden boy was actually a parasite. He needed me to be the villain so he could remain the hero. I put the notebook back. I didn't need to confront him yet. I just needed to survive him. The next piece of the puzzle came from Megan. It was Saturday. Janice was out gardening, putting on a show for the neighbors. Megan and I were in the living room, folding a mountain of laundry. Megan looked tired. She was quiet, lacking her usual bite. "I heard you got a job offer," she said. News traveled fast. I hadn't told anyone, but I had updated my LinkedIn profile. "Yeah," I said. "It is a good opportunity." "That is great." "Hazel," she said, "maybe now you can, help out more." I folded a towel, smoothing the corners. "Megan, I pay rent, I pay utilities. What more do you want? We just want the house to be safe," she said. Her voice cracked. "Safe from what?" I asked. "From losing it," she whispered. She looked at me, her eyes wet. "Mom promised me," she said. "She promised me that if I helped her keep things afloat, if I kept the peace, she would give me the equity for a down payment on a condo next year. I am 30 years old. Hazel, I am still renting. This house is my only shot at a future." I stopped folding. "She promised you equity?" I asked. "Yes," Megan said. "But if the house goes, if she loses it, I get nothing. That is why we need you to sign the agreement. That is why we need the money. We have to keep the bank away." It was heartbreaking. Megan was just another pawn. Janice had promised her a slice of the pie to keep her loyal, to keep her quiet. Megan wasn't defending Janice out of love. She was defending her own future down payment. "Megan," I said gently, "there is no equity." "What?" she asked. "The house is mortgaged to the hilt." I said, "There is a lien on it. There is a foreclosure notice pending. Even if you save it this month, there is no money for a down payment. The money is gone." Megan stared at me. "You are lying," she said. "You are just trying to hurt me. Ask her." I said, "Ask her about Cedar Hollow title and escrow." Megan stood up, clutching a pillowcase. "I hate you," she whispered. "You ruin everything." She ran out of the room. I felt a heavy sadness. I didn't want to hurt Megan, but she needed to wake up. We were all fighting over a corpse. The next morning, the email arrived. Subject: Application approved. 124 Oak Ridge Lane, Crescent Ridge. I sat at my desk and wept, silent, shaking sobs of relief. I had the townhouse. It was small. It was expensive, but it was mine. I replied immediately, transferring the deposit from my secret account. Move-in date: February 14th. 1 day before the foreclosure deadline, 1 day before the trap snapped shut, I began the process of a stealth exit. I bought boxes and hid them in the back of my closet. I packed only the things we didn't use every day: winter coats, spare books, sentimental toys. I did it at night, while the house slept. I felt like a spy in enemy territory. Every interaction with Janice was a minefield. She was oscillating between aggressive sweetness, buying the kids ice cream, telling me I looked rested, and sudden, vicious snaps of temper. And then, the wolf came to the door. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was working. The kids were napping. The doorbell rang. I heard Janice answer it. Her voice was too loud, too cheerful. "Oh, hello? Please come in. Hazel is just upstairs." "Hazel," she called out. "Hazel, come down. There is someone here to see us." "Us." My heart started hammering. I took off my headset. I walked to the landing. Standing in the foyer was a man in a cheap suit. He held a briefcase. Janice was standing next to him, beaming like she was introducing a prize winner. "Hazel, this is Mr. Coburn," she said. "From Brookline?" The man looked up at me. He had a shark smile. "Ms. Brooks," he said, "a pleasure. Your mother suggested we all sit down and finalize the restructuring plan." I gripped the banister. She had invited him. She had brought the predator into the house to corner me, she thought if he was standing there. In the flesh, with his contracts and his pressure, I would fold. She thought I would be too polite to refuse a guest. I walked down the stairs slowly. I did not smile. I didn't agree to a meeting. I said, Janice's smile faltered. Don't be rude. Hazel, Mr. Coburn drove all the way out here. He is trying to help us save the home. He is trying to help you. Mom, I said, not us. Ms. Brooks, Mr. Coburn said, stepping forward. I understand your hesitation, but the household plan is a standard procedure. It simply consolidates the arrears and spreads them out over a new term, using the total household income as the basis for the repayment schedule. It requires a signature from all adult residents. And what happens if the payments are missed? I asked. Well, naturally, all signatories are liable, he said smoothly. But with your income added to the pool, the risk is minimal. My income added to the pool, there it was. They wanted to garnish me. I looked at Janice. She was watching me with desperate, pleading eyes. Just do it, her eyes said. Just save me. I looked at Mr. Coburn. I am not signing anything. I said clearly, Mr. Coburn's smile vanished. Ms. Brooks, without your signature, the forbearance cannot be processed. The foreclosure will proceed on the 15th. I know. I said. Janice made a sound like a wounded animal. Hazel, she cried. You can't do this. It is just a signature. It is just paper. It is debt. Mom, I shouted, losing my cool for the first time. It is $100,000 of debt that isn't mine. I am not signing my life away to fix your mistakes. I turned to Mr. Coburn. You can leave, I said. I am a tenant here. I have a rental agreement. I am not a co-owner, and I am not a co-borrower. And as of today, I am giving my notice. The room went deadly silent. Janice looked at me, her face pale as a sheet. Notice? She whispered. I am moving out. I said, I have found a place. I will be gone by the 14th. Mr. Coburn looked between us, sensing the deal was dead. I see, he said. Well, I will leave you to discuss this. Ms. Brooks, the deadline remains the 15th. He let himself out. The door clicked shut. Janice stood there, trembling. She looked small, old, and terrified. But then the fear turned into something ugly. It turned into rage. You are leaving? She asked, her voice low. Yes, I said. You are abandoning me. After I took you in, after I gave you a roof over your head. I paid for the roof. Mom, I said. I paid rent. I paid utilities. I was a tenant. And now I'm leaving. You can't leave, she said. She took a step toward me. I can. And I will. No, she screamed. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. You can't leave. Hazel, let go of me, I said, pulling back. She didn't let go. Her fingers dug into my flesh. If you leave, everything falls apart, she shrieked. Do you hear me? Everything. The house. Travis. Me. We all go down if you walk out that door. I stared at her. The truth was finally naked. There was no family. There was no love. There was only a structural requirement. I was the load-bearing wall they had decided to install at the last minute to keep the roof from collapsing on their own heads. The ultimatum, pay rent or leave, had been a lie from the start. They never wanted me to leave. The leave part was just a bluff to make me pay. They needed me trapped here. They needed me anchored to this sinking ship so they could stand on my shoulders to keep breathing. I yanked my arm free. That is not my fault. Mom, I said, my voice shaking. I backed away toward the stairs. I am leaving on the 14th. I said. Janice stared at me, her chest heaving. If you walk out on us, she hissed, you will never see this family again. We will cut you out. You will be dead to us. I looked at the woman who had given birth to me. I looked at the foyer where she had welcomed me with a hug that felt like an assessment. I turned around and started climbing the stairs. I guess I am already dead. Mom, I said without looking back, I am just the ghost that pays the bills. I walked into my room and locked the deadbolt. I slid down the door and sat on the floor. My arm throbbed where she had grabbed me. I looked at the calendar on the wall. 7 days. I just had to survive 7 more days. The paint chips were spread out on the floor of the bedroom like a rainbow fan. I had picked them up from the hardware store during my lunch break, hiding them in my purse like contraband. Now, with the door locked and the green circle on my laptop signaling that Mommy was off duty, I let Leo and Sophie choose their future. "Which one for your room?" I asked, keeping my voice low but full of excitement. Leo pointed a chubby finger at a bright, electric blue. "That one," he whispered, "blue lightning. And for you?" "Soph?" She touched a soft lavender square. "Purple flower," she said. "Okay," I said, writing their names on the back of the cards. "Blue lightning and purple flower. When we move to our new base, these will be the colors of your walls. It is going to be an adventure. Like exploring a new planet." Leo looked up, his eyes wide. "Is Grandma coming to the new planet?" I paused. The innocence of the question cut deep. He didn't know that Grandma was currently downstairs trying to figure out how to legally bind his mother to a predatory loan. He just knew her as the woman who gave him cookies sometimes, even if she scolded him for crumbs. "No, buddy," I said gently. "Grandma has to stay here and take care of her house. This is just for us. It is our special mission." I framed the move as a covert operation. We weren't fleeing. We were deploying. We packed a little bit every day. I turned it into a game. Can you fit all your dinosaurs into this shoebox? Can we fold these shirts so small they disappear? It kept the fear at bay for them. For me, the fear was a constant hum in my veins, vibrating alongside a new, steely resolve. I was leaving. I had the lease signed. I had the deposit paid. I had 7 days left in this house, and I intended to survive them without detonating the explosives my family had planted around me. But Travis was making that difficult. He cornered me the next evening in the garage. I was taking the recycling out, a chore I did obsessively now to avoid accusations of clutter. He was leaning against his car, arms crossed. The overhead light cast harsh shadows on his face, making him look older, more jagged. "I saw you moving boxes around in the closet," he said. "I didn't stop walking toward the bin. I am organizing." I said, "You are packing." He corrected, "You are actually planning to bail." I dropped the bottles into the bin. The crash of glass echoed in the concrete space. "I am moving out. Travis, I told Mom, my lease is up on the 14th. I found a place." He let out a short, mirthless laugh. "You think you can just walk away?" he asked. "You think you can live here for 2 months, rack up bills, and then just disappear in the middle of the night?" "I paid my rent," I said, turning to face him, "every cent. I paid the utility surcharge. I bought my own food. I don't owe you, or Mom, anything. You owe the family," he said, stepping off the car. "You owe us for the stability we gave you, and if you leave now, right before the restructuring, you are screwing us. Hazel, and people are going to know about it." "Is that a threat?" I asked. "It is a promise," he said. Maple Glen is a small town. People talk. They talk about who is responsible and who is a flight risk. And Elliot? Well, I imagine he would be very interested to know that his ex-wife skipped town leaving her elderly mother with a mountain of debt. It doesn't look very stable, does it? It looks like the behavior of someone who is manic, someone who maybe shouldn't have primary custody. The air left my lungs. There it was. The weaponization of my motherhood. He was threatening to paint me as unstable to help Elliot take my children. All to squeeze a signature out of me. I looked at my brother. I remembered teaching him how to ride a bike. I remembered patching up his knee when he fell. I remembered covering for him when he broke the neighbor's window. And now, he was standing there, willing to destroy my relationship with my children to save his own skin. "If you say one word to Elliot," I said, my voice shaking with a cold rage I had never felt before, "I will show him the ledger." Travis froze. "What ledger?" "The one in Mom's purse." I lied. I hadn't taken it. But he didn't know that. The one that lists every payment she made for your car insurance and your business loan. The one that proves you aren't the successful real estate mogul you pretend to be, but a man living off his mother's pension. I wonder what your clients would think about that. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open, the color drained from his face. You wouldn't. He whispered, "Try me," I said. I walked back into the house, my heart hammering like a trapped bird. I had bought myself some space, but I knew I had also escalated the war. The next morning, I had a video call with Mr. Henderson from the Legal Aid Project. I took it in my car, parked 3 blocks away behind a pharmacy, just to be safe. "Mr. Henderson looked over the draft notice I had written. "It is good," he said, "but we need to be more explicit. Given the threats you mentioned, we need to create a paper shield." He dictated a new paragraph to me. "This payment of $1,400 represents the final rental obligation for the month of February. I, Hazel Brooks, explicitly deny any and all liability for household debts, mortgages, liens, or third-party agreements, including those with Brookline Outreach Fund. My residency was that of a tenant at will, and I hold no ownership interest or financial responsibility for the property at 42 Elm Street. Write that down," he said. "Sign it, date it, take a photo of the check with that letter. Send it via certified mail. Even if you are handing it to her, you need a time-stamped legal record that you severed ties before the foreclosure date." I typed it out on my laptop right there in the car. It felt like drafting a treaty. Why did she do it? I asked Mr. Henderson, almost to myself. Why did she take a loan from a place like Brookline? She always prided herself on being debt-free. Mr. Henderson sighed. "Desperation, usually," he said, "or pride. Usually, people go to those places when they can't get a bank loan, but they need cash fast to fix something visible. They are selling the appearance of solvency, visible." I drove home thinking about that word, visible. When I got back, the house was empty. Janice was at the grocery store. Travis was at work, or wherever he went to pretend to work. I went down to the basement. I needed to find a box for the kids' books. But really, I was looking for the truth. I went to the storage corner where Janice kept the old tax files. They were organized by year in plastic bins. I found a bin labeled 2018. House. I opened it. Inside were receipts for paint, garden mulch, gutter cleaning, and at the bottom, a thick folder from a roofing company. Invoice, storm damage repair. Total, $18,000. I remembered that storm. It had ripped through Ohio that summer. I was living in the city then. Janice had told me a few shingles blew off. I flipped the page. There was a denial letter from her insurance company. Claim denied due to pre-existing wear and tear. So she had to pay out of pocket. $18,000. She didn't have it. And then, stapled to the denial letter, was the original agreement with Brookline Outreach Fund. Loan amount, $20,000. Interest rate, 28%. Collateral, deed of trust. She had taken the money to fix the roof. Not because the roof was leaking into the living room. The inspection report said the damage was mostly cosmetic, but because it looked bad. She couldn't stand the idea of the neighbors seeing her house with a damaged roof. She couldn't stand the thought of being the widow who couldn't maintain her property. She had sold the foundation of the house to fix the shingles. It was vanity. It was a tragic, crushing vanity that valued the appearance of stability over actual security. She had hidden the debt for 8 years, letting the interest compound, letting it balloon into a monster that was now swallowing us whole, just so she could keep her head held high at the bridge club. I sat on the cold concrete floor, feeling a wave of pity so strong it almost choked me. She wasn't evil. She was just terrified of being seen as less than perfect. But then I found the second document. It was in a folder marked Travis. It was a promissory note from a private lender, not Brookline, but something even sketchier. Venture capital, fast cash. Borrower, Travis Brooks. Cosigner, Janice Brooks. Amount, $50,000. Date, 3 years ago. I did the math. The payments on this loan were huge, and Janice was making them. I stared at the paper. This was the business venture. Travis hadn't just failed. He had dragged her into a $50,000 hole, and that was why he was so desperate. That was why he needed me to pay the rent and sign the agreement. He wasn't trying to save the house for Mom. He was trying to keep the house afloat so that his creditors didn't come after him when the collateral vanished. If the house was foreclosed on by Brookline, the secondary lender for Travis's loan would call in the debt immediately. Travis would be bankrupt. He was using me as a human shield. The pity I felt for Janice evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard determination. They were drowning. Yes, but they were trying to use my body as a raft. I went back upstairs. I packed the rest of the kids' toys. I didn't feel guilty anymore. I felt like I was escaping a burning building. That night, Megan came over. She found me in the kitchen, packing the special plates I had bought for the kids. "Hazel," she said. She looked awful. Her eyes were puffy, her hair unwashed. "Hi, Megan," I said. "Please don't go," she said. Her voice was small, like a child's. "Megan, I have to," I said. "I can't stay here. It is toxic." "If you leave, Mom stops paying on the house," Megan said. "She told me. She said if you leave, she is just going to let it go. And if she lets it go, you lose your down payment." I finished. She nodded, tears spilling over. "I have been waiting 5 years for this. Hazel, 5 years of kissing her ass. 5 years of doing her laundry and listening to her complain. I earned that equity." "There is no equity," I snapped, keeping my voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. "Megan, listen to me. The house is gone. Between the Brookline loan and Travis's debt, there is nothing left. She is promising you air." She shook her head, refusing to believe it. "No," she said. "She said if we just restructure, if we just get through this month." "Hazel, just pay for a little longer, just until I close on my place in April. Please, just 2 more months." I looked at my sister. She wasn't asking me to stay because she missed me. She wasn't asking me to stay because she loved my children. She was asking me to throw $1,400, $3,000, really, if I counted the utilities and groceries, into a fire so that she could extract a promise that didn't exist. Her loyalty was transactional. She loved Mom as long as Mom was a bank, and she tolerated me only as long as I was a deposit. I can't. "Megan," I said gently, "I have to save myself, and you should too. You need to look at your own finances and assume that money is never coming. You are selfish," she whispered, "just like Travis says." "Maybe," I said, "or maybe I am the only one who can do math." She stormed out. I watched her go, feeling a pang of loss. I was losing my sister, not because of a fight, but because of a balance sheet. 2 days before the move, I decided to try one last thing, not for Travis, not for Megan, but for the mother I remembered from before the vanity took over. "Mom," I said, "I want to buy you coffee." Janice looked up from her tablet. She had been giving me the silent treatment for 3 days. "Coffee?" she asked. "Let's go to the daily grind." I said, "Just us, please." She hesitated, then nodded. She put on her coat, checking her reflection in the mirror to ensure she looked perfect. The coffee shop was neutral ground. It smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon. We sat by the window. I bought her a latte. "Mom," I said, wrapping my hands around my mug, "I know you are angry, but I want to offer you a different kind of help." She took a sip, looking out the window at the passing cars. "Unless it is a check, I am not interested," she said. I ignored that. "I can help you find a bankruptcy attorney." I said, "There are ways to protect your pension. We can sell the furniture. We can hold an estate sale for the china and the silver. You can downsize to a condo. There are nice seniors' apartments in Westgate." She turned to look at me, her eyes flashing. "Westgate?" she spat. "That is for people on assistance. That is for people who have failed. It is for people who want peace." "Mom," I said, "you are drowning here. You are holding on to a house that is eating you alive, just so Mrs. Gable and the Bridge Club don't know you are struggling." She set the cup down hard. You think this is about vanity? She asked. It is about legacy. Hazel, your father bought that house. It is all I have to show for 40 years of marriage. And you want me to sell it at a yard sale? It is better than foreclosure. I said, Mom, the Brookline loan. I saw the papers. I know it was for the roof. Her face went pale. You went through my things. She whispered, I was looking for a way to help. I said, and I know about Travis's loan too. Mom, he is using you. He is letting you take the fall for his bad business deal. Stop it, she hissed. Travis is trying to save us. He is the only one standing by me. You are the one running away. I am not running away. I said, I am stepping out of the line of fire. I can help you pack. I can help you sell things. But I cannot give you money. I have to protect Leo and Sophie. Then you are useless to me, she said. The words hung in the air, brutal and final. Useless, not unloved, useless. Fix what you caused. Hazel, she said, standing up. Sign the agreement, pay the back rent, or don't bother speaking to me. She walked out of the coffee shop, head held high, coat buttoned wrong. She looked regal and ridiculous and heartbreakingly lonely. I sat there for a long time, watching her get into her car. I realized then that she would rather sink with the ship while wearing her captain's hat than get into the lifeboat and admit she had hit an iceberg. The night before we left, the kids made a card. We sat on the floor of the empty room. The blue lightning and purple flower paint chips were taped to their new treasure boxes. What do you want to draw for Grandma? I asked. I will draw her house, Leo said, with a big sun. I will draw a heart, Sophie said. They worked in silence, tongues poking out in concentration. They drew a house with crooked windows and a giant yellow sun. They drew stick figures holding hands. We love you, Grandma. I wrote for them. We went downstairs. Janice was in the living room, watching TV with the volume turned up too high. She didn't look at us. Grandma, Leo said, we made you this. He held out the card. Janice stared at the screen for a long moment. I thought she was going to ignore him. My heart hammered in my chest. Don't you dare! I thought, don't you dare reject them. Finally, she turned. She looked at Leo's hopeful face. She looked at the card. She reached out and took it. Her hand was trembling. She looked at the crooked house. She looked at the hearts. For a second, the mask slipped. Her face crumbled. Her eyes filled with tears, and her mouth softened into a curve of genuine pain. She looked like my mother again. She reached out and touched Leo's cheek. Oh, Leo, she whispered. Grandma, are you sad? Sophie asked. Janice took a ragged breath. She closed her eyes, and then, I saw it happen. I saw the wall go back up. I saw the steel slide back into place. She couldn't afford to be soft. Softness meant admitting she was losing them. Softness meant the ultimatum had failed. She opened her eyes. They were dry. Thank you, she said stiffly. She placed the card on the table. Face down. You should go to bed. You have a big day tomorrow. She turned back to the TV. I ushered the kids upstairs. My heart was breaking for them, but also for her. She had chosen control over closeness. She had chosen her pride over her grandchildren. It was the loneliest choice I had ever seen. The move was surgical. I had hired movers, 2 guys with a truck who arrived at 8 in the morning. I wanted it done fast. Janice stayed in her bedroom with the door shut. Travis wasn't there. He was probably hiding, afraid I would confront him again. We loaded the boxes, the furniture, the kids' beds. I swept the room. It was empty. The rug was gone, revealing the hardwood floors she loved so much. The walls were bare. I took out the envelope I had prepared. Inside was the check for $1,400, marked final rent payment in the memo line, and the letter Mr. Henderson had drafted. I walked to the kitchen counter. I placed the envelope next to the fruit bowl. I placed my house key on top of it. I stood there for a moment, listening to the silence of the house, the silence she had fought so hard to protect. Now she had it. She had all the silence in the world. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel a surge of triumph. I felt a heavy, dull grief. I was mourning the living. I was mourning the family I wished I had. The mother I wanted to save but couldn't. Goodbye, Mom. I whispered to the empty air. I walked out the front door and closed it gently. I didn't slam it. I just clicked it shut. We drove to Crescent Ridge. The townhouse was small, but it smelled of fresh paint and possibilities. The kids ran in, screaming with delight, their voices echoing off the empty walls. "We are here!" Leo shouted. "The new base." I ordered pizza. We ate on the floor. We put up the paint chips. We made beds out of blankets. For the first time in months, I didn't have to hush them. I didn't have to worry about footprints. I didn't have to lock my door. I felt lighter, physically lighter, as if gravity had released its hold on me, but the phone in my pocket felt heavy. At 8 o'clock. It buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was a group text from Janice. To me, Travis, Megan, and Aunt Lorna. Family meeting. Sunday at 2 p.m. Attendance is mandatory. We need to settle the final accounts and the future of the estate. Do not be late. Mandatory. She was still trying to give orders. She was still trying to be the landlord of my life, and she had invited Aunt Lorna. Lorna was the matriarch of the extended family, the one whose opinion mattered most to Janice. This wasn't a meeting, it was a tribunal. She was going to try to shame me in front of the family. She was going to play her final card. I looked at my children, sleeping soundly in their new room. I wasn't scared anymore. I had the receipts. I had the truth. I typed back one word. Okay, I would go. Not to apologize, not to pay, but to finish it. I parked my car 2 blocks away from my mother's house. It was a conscious choice. I did not want to be boxed in. I did not want to be blocked in the driveway. I wanted a clear exit path. Sunday afternoon in Maple Glen was quiet. Lawns were being mowed. Flags were flapping lazily on porches. It was the picture of suburban tranquility, a stark contrast to the demolition derby I was about to walk into. I checked my bag one last time. It was heavy, not with clothes, but with paper. I had 3 copies of everything. The original rental agreement, the text messages where Travis demanded utility surcharges, the photo of the bank statement showing the withdrawals at the casino and the payments to Brookline, the foreclosure notice I had found behind the toaster, and the letter from Mr. Henderson, my legal aid, stating clearly that I had no financial obligation to the estate. I also had my phone, fully charged, with a specific voicemail queued up. I had left Leo and Sophie with a babysitter, a lovely woman named Mrs. Gable. Ironically, the same woman who played bridge with Janice. She had no idea about the war. She just thought I had a business meeting. I told the kids I had to go do some boring paperwork. I refused to let them see this. They would remember the pancakes in the blue room. They would not remember their grandmother screaming about debts. I walked to the house. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside. The air smelled of lemon polish and tension. They were all in the living room. Janice sat in her high-backed armchair, looking like a deposed queen. Travis stood by the fireplace, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of water. Megan was on the sofa, looking pale and chewing her fingernail, and in the corner, sitting on a folding chair, was Aunt Lorna, Janice's older sister, the family matriarch. She was a no-nonsense woman who had raised 4 boys on a teacher's salary and had 0 tolerance for foolishness. "Hazel," Janice said, "you are late. It is 2 o'clock exactly." "Mom," I said, checking my watch. "Sit down," Travis commanded, pointing to a wooden chair placed in the center of the room. It looked like a witness stand. I ignored him and sat on the edge of the ottoman, closer to the door. "I am here." I said, "What is this about?" "It is about accountability." Janice said, her voice was brittle. "You left this house in a state of chaos. You walked out on your lease without proper notice. And you left outstanding debts that put this entire family at risk." "I didn't walk out," I said calmly. "I gave notice. I paid my rent through the end of the month. I left the key." "You left us high and dry," Travis snapped. He stepped forward, his face flushed. You know Mom was counting on that money to manage the restructuring. By leaving, you sabotaged the plan with Brookline. We are not talking about plans. Travis, I said, we are talking about debts. We have a document. Janice interrupted. She picked up a sheaf of papers from the side table. We have drawn up a settlement, she said. Since you refused to sign the family agreement, we have had to formalize the damages. This outlines the back rent you owe, the emotional distress caused by your sudden departure, and your share of the household liability that was incurred during your residency. She held it out. Sign it, she said, and we can put this behind us. We can be a family again. I looked at the paper. It was nonsense. It was a desperate attempt to create a legal tether where none existed. I am not signing that. Mom, I said, you have to, Travis shouted. You lived here. You used the resources. You are responsible. I stood up. I reached into my bag and pulled out my own stack of papers. I am responsible for what I agreed to. I said. I handed a folder to Aunt Lorna first. What is this? Lorna asked, putting on her reading glasses. Those are the receipts. Aunt Lorna. I said, my rental agreement, my bank transfer records showing $1,400 a month, my utility payments. I handed copies to Megan and Janice. I paid to live here. I continued, keeping my voice steady. I paid market rate. I paid surcharges. I bought my own food. The narrative that I was a leech is a lie. That is not the point, Janice said, throwing the folder on the floor. The point is the household debt. The Brookline loan. You are part of this household. No. Mom. I said, I am not. I took out the photo of the foreclosure notice. This is the point, I said. I held it up. You are being foreclosed on. Mom. On the 15th. That is in 2 days. The room went silent. Megan let out a small gasp. You told me everything was fine, Megan whispered, looking at Janice. You told me if Hazel paid, we were safe. We would be safe if she signed, Travis yelled, pointing at me. She is the one letting it happen. I turned to Travis. Stop lying. Travis, I said. I pulled out my phone. I have a voicemail. I said, from Linda at Brookline. Travis's eyes widened. Don't, he warned. I pressed play. The volume was all the way up. Ms. Brooks, this is Linda. I am following up on the conversation with your brother. Travis, he indicated that you would be assuming the primary liability for the consolidated loan starting in February. We have the transfer paperwork he requested ready for signature. Please call us back to finalize the shift in responsibility so we can release the hold on the original deed. I stopped the recording. I looked at Janice. She was staring at Travis. You told them I would assume liability? I asked Travis. You told them I was taking over the debt? I was trying to buy time. Travis stammered. They needed a new income source. You have a job. It was just on paper. Hazel. It was just to get the extension. It was fraud. I said, you were going to trick me into signing that agreement, and then you were going to use it to transfer the entire $18,000 debt, plus interest, onto my name. You were going to sacrifice my credit, my future, and my children's stability to save yourself. Save myself? Janice cried. I did it for the house. I did it for the family. For the family? I asked. I turned to Megan. Megan, did you know? I asked. Megan was crying. She looked at her lap. Did you know about the transfer? I pressed. I knew they needed you to sign. She sobbed. Mom said if you didn't sign, she couldn't give me the down payment. She looked up at me, her face streaked with mascara. I just wanted to leave too. Hazel, I hate renting. I wanted a life. I thought you could handle it. You always handle everything. I felt a cold pity for her. So you were willing to let me drown so you could swim? I asked. I didn't think it was drowning, she wailed. I thought it was just paperwork. It is never just paperwork, Aunt Lorna said. We all turned to look at her. Lorna was reading the documents I had given her. She was reading the Brookline statement I had photographed. Lorna stood up. She was not a tall woman, but she commanded the room. Janice, she said, her voice low and dangerous. What is this administrative fee? $150? It is standard, Janice muttered. It is predatory, Lorna said. I volunteer at the senior center. Janice, I see this every week. These companies target widows. They target people who are afraid of losing face. They structure the loans so you never pay down the principal. You just pay fees. Forever. She looked at Travis. And you? She said, you set this up? I found them, Travis said, shrinking back. You fed your mother to sharks, Lorna said, and then you tried to throw your sister in to distract them. It is not like that, Travis shouted. We are in a hole. We needed cash. Why did you need cash? I asked. I looked at Janice. Tell them about the other loan. Mom. Janice froze. What other loan? Lorna asked. The one for $50,000. I said, the one co-signed by Janice Brooks, for a business venture that failed 3 years ago. Travis's face went white. Shut up, Hazel, he hissed. I turned to him. You are the leak. Travis, you are the reason she can't pay Brookline. She is paying your private lender to keep you from going bankrupt. I looked at Janice. He isn't protecting you. Mom, he is protecting himself. If the house goes, the collateral for his loan is gone. His lender calls in the debt. He loses his car. He loses his condo. He loses his reputation. He kept me here, paying rent, paying utilities, buying food, just so you would have enough cash to keep covering his mistakes. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a structure collapsing. Janice turned to her son. She looked at him with a dawning horror. Travis? She whispered. You told me. You told me the business loan was handled. You told me the payments I was making were just temporary bridge loans. I am handling it. Travis screamed. His composure shattered. He looked wild. I needed the rent. He yelled at me. I needed the $1,400. Do you know how much the interest is? Do you have any idea? If I miss one payment, they come for everything. So you decided to take mine? I asked quietly. You decided to take the food out of my children's mouths to pay for your failed house-flipping scheme? You have a job, he spat. You have alimony. You are fine. I am the one who stayed. I am the one who mowed the lawn. I am the one who listened to her complain for 10 years. I earned that money. He was panting. He had admitted it. He felt entitled to my money because he had put in the time being the good son. Janice stood up slowly. She looked older than I had ever seen her. You used me, she whispered to him. We used each other. Mom, Travis yelled. Don't act like a saint. You took the Brookline loan because you were too proud to fix the roof with asphalt shingles. You wanted slate. You wanted the neighbors to think you were rich. We are both liars. He kicked the chair in the center of the room. It clattered to the floor. It is all her fault, he shouted, pointing at me. If she had just signed the paper, we would have had 6 more months. We could have fixed it. She ruined everything. I looked at them, my brother, red-faced and screaming, my sister, sobbing on the couch, my mother, standing in the ruins of her own vanity. I felt a profound sadness, but I also felt free. I am leaving. I said. I turned to the door. You can't leave, Travis shouted. We are not done. We are done. Travis, I said without turning around. Hazel, Janice called out. Her voice was desperate. Hazel, please, what do we do? I stopped. I looked back at her. You sell the house. Mom, I said. You let the foreclosure happen, or you declare bankruptcy. You stop paying Travis's loan. You let him face his own debts, and you move into an apartment. But the shame, she whispered. Everyone will know. I looked at Aunt Lorna. Lorna nodded at me. I will stay with her. Hazel, Lorna said. Go to your children. Thank you. Aunt Lorna, I said. I walked out of the house. I walked down the driveway, past the manicured lawn, past the perfect flower beds that hid the rotting foundation. I got into my car. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I didn't drive away immediately. I took out my phone. I dialed the number for Brookline Outreach Fund. Brookline Outreach. This is Linda. Hi, Linda. I said, This is Hazel Brooks. I am recording this call. There was a pause. Okay. I am calling to formally state that I have vacated the property at 42 Elm Street. I have no financial interest in the property. I have never signed any agreement with your company. Any attempt to link my name, my income, or my credit to the debt held by Janice Brooks will be met with immediate legal action for fraud and identity theft. Do you understand? Yes. Ms. Brooks, we will update the file. And one more thing, I said. I am filing a complaint today with the Ohio Attorney General's Consumer Protection Section regarding your administrative fee structure and your predatory targeting of seniors. I hung up. I opened the browser on my phone. I went to the state website. I filed the complaint. It took 10 minutes. It wasn't theatrics. It was paperwork. It was the only language these people understood. Then I started the car. I drove to the babysitter's house. I picked up Leo and Sophie. Did you finish your boring paperwork? Leo asked as he climbed into his car seat. Yes, baby, I said. I finished it all. We drove to the townhouse in Crescent Ridge. It was small. The view was of a parking lot, but inside, the walls were painted blue lightning and purple flower. That night, I made dinner. We sat on the floor because our table hadn't arrived yet. We ate spaghetti and laughed when Sophie got sauce on her nose. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Megan. I am sorry. Lorna is making Mom call a lawyer. Travis left. I don't know what I'm going to do. I didn't reply. I couldn't save her. She had to save herself. I looked at my children. They were safe. They were happy. And most importantly, they were free. The cycle stopped with me. The secrets, the debts, the vanity, the using of children as leverage. It all hit a wall when it got to me. I was the wall. I wasn't the daughter who abandoned her family. I was the mother who protected hers. And as I tucked them into bed that night, in a room paid for with honest money, I knew that was the only title that mattered. Thank you so much for listening to Hazel's story. It was a journey of breaking free from toxic expectations and finding the strength to stand alone. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Please drop a comment below and share your location. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more emotional dramas about family, betrayal, and justice. And I want to hear from you. Do you think Hazel did the right thing by walking away, or should she have tried harder to save her mother? Share your thoughts in English in the comments section. See you in the next story.